Good evening and welcome to our Wednesday night Lenten services. We begin by singing Holden Evening Prayer together.
Jesus Christ, you are the light of the world.
The light no darkness can overcome.
Stay with us now, for it is evening,
and the day is almost over.
Let your light scatter the darkness
and shine within your people here.
Joyous light of heavenly dawning, loving glow of God's own face, you who sing creation's story, shine on every land and race. Now as evening falls around us, we shall raise our songs to you, God of daybreak, God of shadows, come and light our hearts anew. In the stars that grace the darkness, in this blazing sun and dawn, in the light of peace and wisdom, we can hear your quiet song. Love that fills the night with wonder, love that warms the weary soul, love that bursts all chains asunder, set us free and make us whole. You who made the heavens splendor, every dancing star of night, make us shine with gentle justice, let us each reflect your light. Mighty God of all creation, gentle Christ who lights our way, loving Spirit of salvation, lead us on to endless day.
May God be with you all.
And also with you.
Let us sing our thanks to God.
It is right to give God thanks and praise.
Blessed are you, Creator of the universe. From old you have led your people by night and day. May the light of your Christ make our darkness bright. For your word and your presence are the light of our pathways, and you are the light and life of all creation.
Let my prayers rise up like incense before you, the lifting up of my hands as an offering to you. Oh God, I call to you, come to me now. Oh, come to my voice when I cry. May our prayers come before you, O God, as incense, and may your presence surround and fill us, so that in union with all creation, we might sing your praise and your love in our lives. Amen.
Well, thank you for joining me on this series that we're doing called What Does Peace Mean to You? And we're having a series of interviews with people from various different backgrounds, and just hearing all about what it means to be a peacemaker in this world. So some people may or may not know you. So why don't you begin by telling a little bit about who you are and whatever else you want to share?
Yeah, sure. Well, my name's Nathan Coulter. I serve on the Bloomington City Council as an at-large member. I have lived in Bloomington. Oh, I'm going to turn my phone on silent before that happens again. I have lived in Bloomington my whole life. I grew up here. I went to Ridgeview, Oak Grove, Olson, and Jefferson. And I currently live over kind of by Moyer Park with my wife, Charity, and our 2-year-old daughter, Eleanor, who is napping right now. And we are expecting baby number 2 this summer.
Oh, yay.
So
Congratulations.
thank you. Thank you. So like I said, I serve on the Bloomington City Council. I'm serving my first term on the City Council. I was just elected in 2017. I previously served on the Bloomington Housing and Redevelopment Authority Board and the board for the Perpich Center for Arts Education, which is a statewide arts education agency, obviously most known for the school that they operate up in Golden Valley. And by day, I work as a legislative assistant at the Minnesota State Senate.
Okay. And I seem to remember you mentioning that you were a Lutheran as well.
I am indeed. Lifelong member of Mount Olivet Lutheran Church up on 50th and Knox, and was baptized and confirmed there and taught Sunday school 9 years total, I think. I taught in high school and then started up again a few years after I graduated from college. And then when my daughter was coming along, we decided it was time for me to step back from some of the more optional things in my life. So that was one of them. But yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay. Well, the first question then is, what does the word peace mean to you?
Yeah, so in thinking about this, what came to mind to me was that quote from Martin Luther King, that true peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice. And I think maybe it's a Minnesotan thing or whatever it is, but there is this belief out there that peace is just sort of going along or getting along to go along, that it's playing nice and pretending that differences, that conflict don't exist. And I think we've learned particularly over the last year that that's just not the case, that to the extent that we are able to do that, it really doesn't work for very long. And I think what it comes down to for me is that peace is actively working toward something better, recognizing that, like Dr. King said, that it's the presence of justice, that it's ensuring that everybody has a fair shake, everybody has the chance to get by in life and do the things they want to do and make a life for themselves. And what the other thing that came to mind for me was that hymn, Blessed Assurance. And that's one of my favorites. And I think it's such a really good way of describing that. It's, not cockiness, not boastfulness, but this confidence, this assurance that, in the face of challenges and even hate, that love and care for our neighbors will ultimately prevail, and that it's going to take all of us doing the work to make that happen.
Yeah, nice. And because you are in an interesting field in the political world, which has been such a part of the discomfort of the last year, well, the last few years in many ways, how does peace then apply to your line of work? And where do you see or not see peace efforts?
Sure. Well, I think, like I said, for me, a lot, there are sort of a couple of pieces to this, and I think, the first, what I kind of describe as taking action, as doing things. What are we proactively doing, whether it's moving forward on city ordinances or things like that, like actively passing laws and that kind of thing, or the budget decisions that we make. What are the choices that we make? And if you've ever listened to a city council meeting, you've heard me say that budget decisions are the truest expressions of our values, right?
Yes.
They literally are, where are we choosing to spend our finite, our limited resources? And so how are the choices that we make to invest or not invest in something, whatever it is, furthering peace? And I think the second piece, it's maybe a little bit more sort of passive in nature, but I think it's a really, really valuable aspect to being an elected official. And it's one that I think often gets overlooked. And that is, I guess I would sort of call it accountability. And that's, that's holding myself accountable, holding, other council members accountable, city staff, and the broader community, whether it's, whether it's, asking the important questions or, pushing back when we hear things that we know are not true or hateful or hurtful or something like that. That it's recognizing that the job of being an elected official, being a leader, is not just passing laws, but it's what are we representing to the community. And I think you're exactly right that politics, it does seem particularly acute over the last few years that politics has become decidedly less peaceful. And I think part of that is sort of the mix of people involved in the conversation. I think a lot of it is the sort of the instantaneous nature of news these days, and just that we have access to more information, and it's, I mean, you look back at history, and politics has not always been particularly peaceful. I mean, we know,
Sure.
looking back, members of Congress got into physical fights over slavery and things like that, right? But it does seem to be taking on a more toxic and an increasingly disconnected um, sort of aspect to it lately. And I think, it is going to take all of us, like, and that's where I think that accountability piece comes into play, is that, we have to hold, of course, our elected officials, our government staff and so on. But I think we have to hold ourselves and our entire community accountable for building that kind of peace. And, as far as where do I see it or not see it? And, I have always believed in the concept of working in good faith with anyone who will do the same. And, that's not to say that we're going to agree on everything, because we know we're not. That's not the goal. The goal is not complete agreement, but it's recognizing that, that we are all kind of in the same boat here, that at the end of the day, what's good for our community is good for all of us. And I think we are increasingly seeing folks who are not interested in working in good faith, just generally, whether that's as a result of, political disagreements or personality differences or whatever it is. It does seem like those things are overriding that focus on making things better. And I will say, based on what I have seen just within Bloomington over the last year or so, particularly, I think those folks are increasingly in the minority, which I think is a large part of why they are angry.
Okay.
But I think, the last, year or so really has shown us that there is a need for us to listen and learn from each other, just in a lot of different ways. And, I think we just, there is so much potential, over the last, year, I think we have seen some of the best in humanity, and I think we've seen some of the worst too.
Yeah.
And I think it comes down to all of us, appealing to what Lincoln called the better angels of our nature.
Hmm. Yeah, reflecting on that a little bit, I do think it's true that there are people, and this is in any sphere, but there are people who are not interested in collaboration or learning or seeing your side. They just want to win. And
Mm-hmm.
they'll almost play as dirty as they can to
Yep.
win. And
Mm-hmm.
in that regard, um, trying to work towards peace, there can be a temptation, maybe some of us non-confrontational people,
Mm-hmm.
to try to work with people like that. And I think that's the effort, is to say, look, if you want peace, which is aligned with justice, sometimes it means standing up and being very strong and saying, no, you're not going to bully me into submission.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to bully me to be quiet. These people are hurting. This needs attention. And this is real. And just because you don't care, um, peace doesn't mean me disappearing or shutting my mouth to make you happy. And I think that's really hard
Yeah.
for some of us sort of Scandinavian backgrounds, more
Mm-hmm.
like non-confrontational personalities. It's also like, and this is my own learning as a Christian, you sort of feel like you have to be nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm learning that there's a courage. We see how Jesus spoke up harshly to the people in
Mm-hmm.
power. Um, and so I think that's an ongoing struggle, but I definitely see how that relates to the political world.
Yeah.
It makes it a
It's
challenge.
it's so interesting to me because, obviously not so long ago was Martin Luther King Day, and I'm actually currently reading a biography of Winston Churchill.
Mm,
And it's so interesting because everybody celebrates Dr. King as this man of peace, when I of course wasn't around when he was, but he was consistently in public polling one of the most unpopular people in the country at
right.
the time that he was active in doing these things, because he wasn't going along to get along. And
Yes.
I bring up that biography of Churchill because um, I'm just now, I'm reading, and it's towards the end of the Second World War, but the Indian independence movement is now, and where the part that I'm reading is gaining steam, and Gandhi is, in
Hmm.
sort of full on mode to disrupt British rule over India. And there were obviously a lot of people who really hated Gandhi for what he was doing, and it just
Wow.
it cuts against that image that we have, I think, sometimes. But that, like you said, that really is what peace is that it's aligned with justice. And um so we I just it's just such a striking contrast to me when we think of Dr. King and we think of Gandhi as these ultimate sort of symbols of peace, when that goes against that sort of popular image almost of peace.
I think that was really helpful for me to learn, to say, in their time, these people were, if you asked, is this a peaceful person?
Mm-hmm.
People would have said, well, they can't be because they're causing so much unrest.
Mm-hmm.
They're causing so much frustration. But we
Mm-hmm.
look back on them and say, oh, these were peaceful people. And it makes me think about today, like, what are we missing today because someone's stirring the pot, because someone
Mm-hmm.
is making us uncomfortable? Um, they can often be demonized by the news and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we can sort of miss the forest through the trees unless we really pause and think deeper, um, about what's really going on. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So the last question is, what do you do uh, to strive in regards to cultivating peace in your work? And since you talked a little bit about that, maybe if there's any specific moments that you can think of, where you were really trying to cultivate peace as we've been talking about.
Sure. So, I don't claim to be any kind of sort of oracle about this. This is just sort of based on my own experience as a city council member and working now for 8 years at the state legislature. And a couple of the things that I try to do is to just sort of be available and responsive, because I think, like you have mentioned, that just pretending that conflict doesn't exist, it really doesn't address anything. And we have to be willing to have the conversations, even the really, really tough, uncomfortable conversations. And, I think as an elected official, as somebody who's elected by this community to serve the public, that availability, that responsiveness, even if I tell folks things they don't like hearing, that is a first step to just being willing and being able to have those conversations. And a lot of what I do when I respond to emails or talk to folks on the phone is listening not just to what people are saying, but what they mean. And when folks are, a lot of times when folks are really, really upset about something, it's more than just the thing they're upset about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I will say, particularly in the city of Bloomington, having lived here my whole life, one of the sort of fundamental things that I think a lot of people are really, really anxious and even I would go so far as to say afraid of is change. Is just the reality that we are a changing community. And the thing I talk often about is in the year 2000, Bloomington was about 90% white.
Yeah. Okay.
And obviously we don't have the 2020 census numbers yet, but the last numbers I saw had us somewhere around 72 or 73% white, which means that in 20 years, give or take, our proportion of people of color has almost tripled.
Yeah.
And that is just crazy.
Yeah.
And so there's just a lot of change happening in this community. And when you're somebody who's lived in the same town for 30, 40, 50 years, like we have a lot of in Bloomington, that can be really unsettling. And so, I think it's about, what is this really about? What is the concern that you're really bringing forward here? And another thing is just being honest with folks. And I always try to be honest about where I stand on issues, where I stand on things that come before the council. And I think that's particularly important when there is a disagreement, that we are being honest with each other about our values, about our beliefs, about what we think is the best choice for our community. And not pretending to be something that I'm not.
Yeah.
Because when we do that, we avoid the issue. We don't take on the difficult conversation, and it becomes, again, it becomes more about that absence of tension rather than the presence of justice. And I think, I talked a little bit about this earlier, but it's about showing leadership and recognizing that, the work that we do as a city council is not just what happens in those city council meetings, but it's how do we respond to or comment on questions or events, and how do we interact with the broader community to ensure that presence of justice within our community. And it's like we said earlier too, that peace and respect it's not just about, oh yeah, you're right and I'm wrong, but that at the end of the day, we're all in the same boat. We all do better when we all do better, right? To borrow a quote there. And that sometimes that's what we're called upon to do, is to lead and to make peace in really, really challenging times. And the story that comes to mind for me is, just not too long ago, I had a conversation with the senior pastor, with one of my pastors at Mount Olivet, because I was really actually struggling with this concept of peace and civility, and how do we, get past these things. And he reminded me of the story of Esther and Mordecai, and how Mordecai basically called Esther out and was like, you can try to hide, but don't think you're not going to be a victim here if you do that. And the specific quote, I looked it up today just to make sure I got the wording right, was, and who knows, but that you have come to your position for such a time as this. And that was, to me, just such a really powerful moment, that we don't choose what comes to us. We don't choose the times in which we live, and it's up to us to respond in the best way that we can, to make peace in the best way that we can. And that's something that just I think about so often these days.
That's perfect. That's such a great way to wrap it up and state it. I love that we do not control what's going on in the crazy world, but maybe we can be a beacon of hope and a beacon of grace and peace to a crazy world. Thank you so much for being willing to do this.
The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. An angel went from God to a town called Nazareth, to a woman whose name was Mary. The angel said to her, "Rejoice, O highly favored, for God is with you. You shall bear a child,
Great and merciful God, source and ground of all goodness and life, give to your people the peace that passes all understanding and the will to live your gospel of mercy and justice through Jesus Christ our Lord.
Amen.
God, remember us in your love and teach us to pray.
Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name.
Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Save us from the time of trial and deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, the power, and the glory are yours, now and forever. Amen.
Let us bless our God. Praise and thanks to you. May God Creator bless us and keep us. May Christ be ever light for our lives. May the Spirit of love be our guide and path for all of our days. Amen.
Go in peace.